One of the most common degrees at the Central Intelligence Agency is a history major. And it's because historians are trained in how to find sources, evaluate the bias, credibility, and relevance of those sources, and then make inferences about what we can conclude given the information in front of us. As we begin this next lesson, we're going to start with a little mini workshop on an important way to think about two different types of sources and how each of them can offer us valuable information. To begin with, consider the question on the board. For each of these situations, which source would you likely trust more? Pause the video to think. The likely answers are the ones that I have highlighted. Think for a moment about what makes them different from the others. I'm not sure if it always means we can trust more, but I definitely think there can be advantages to looking at these highlighted sources, which we would consider primary artifacts. These are going straight to the source so that we can consider directly from those involved what was happening. It doesn't always mean we can trust it to tell us the truth, but it does mean we can get this direct insight instead of somebody else's interpretation or biases. Let's think about sources a different way. Here are some examples of some different sources that you might learn about the past. You might consider how you would divide those into a few different categories. For example, what makes the blue sources different from the red ones? Again, I would consider the red sources what we call primary documents. These are things that are created during an event. And so if we're studying the Middle Ages, these are things that were made in the 10 and 1100s. A secondary source is something created afterwards, and it could be 50 years afterwards or 1,000 years afterwards. Either way, the idea is that someone else is conducting research into the original event and presenting you that research. And so you're looking at this secondary account because it's coming from a second person, not you and not the original source. When we think about how these break down, you can distinguish them by their definitions. A primary source is from the time. We also call it a first-hand account. Examples, if we're looking at the Middle Ages, might be the actual ruins of a castle. So sometimes you need to travel to see primary sources. It might be a thing like the armor of a knight, or it could be writing such as the letter from a king. There are advantages to primary sources because they can let you see into the minds of the people. They can let you feel what it's like to walk through the halls of a castle or read the thoughts of a person that they are trying to express. One of the hardest parts about history is that when we're living here in the 2020s, it can be really challenging to put ourselves in the shoes of somebody who lived centuries or millennia ago and had very, very different lives from our own. Primary sources can help us do that. But it's important to remember that doesn't always mean you can trust them. People from the past lied or were wrong, just like people can be today. And so every time you look at a new source, you need to investigate and evaluate it to determine if it can be reliable. Secondary sources are then created after an event. They are someone's interpretation, based on their research or their memory or their opinions. And you have to be careful to see where that information is coming from. Examples can include everything from a textbook to a history book to a documentary on YouTube. The advantage is that they often present facts more clearly because they can pull together lots of different research pieces and text features. They might be able to include maps and graphs and put it all in one place for you. You can find things that fit your specific purpose and you as an audience. And so like a middle school textbook is going to be written at your grade level. And they can often include analysis too, where someone else is doing some of the thinking for you, which can be helpful. But again, it's not always going to be trustworthy. There are bad websites out there. There are books that are extremely biased and that may not have good facts or at least a nice balance of facts for you to use. From here, we're going to take some time to consider these sources more deeply using a few practice activities.